Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons, or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we've got a heavy episode to talk about, not in, the plot sense, really, as much as, how controversial this episode is. We are talking about the principal in the Pauper, which is largely considered by certain parts of the internet, I'll say, or fandoms, or parts of fandoms, to be declared the death of the golden age of The Simpsons. So, of the most popular opinions, or the majority opinions, this episode is the highest voted episode of, when the golden age officially ends. So what does that mean moving forward? I don't know, but fortunately I don't have to figure it out alone, because joining me today, as always, the Pauper to my principal, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm feeling like an imposter. There's definitely a lot to talk about within this episode. I mean, even within the staff of The Simpsons, this episode is controversial, so I know we're going to get into all that, but I just got to throw this thought out there before we begin reviewing this, because we've talked about this episode before with people on Twitter, and I don't know how you can call the end of an age after one episode before you see the following episodes. I just, we'll get into that. Yeah, there's too much to say and think about this one, so I guess we should relax, get into our usual bit that we do, and just and go about this with the most common sense that we can muster for this. So I'm going to quit talking. Let me throw it back to you so we can get started. The man, the myth, the crapweeds. It is Miles.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot to unwrap on this one. We might end up talking more about this episode than actually recapping this episode in this one, just because of all the things that we have to say, but and talk about with, like you said, the writers and the staff. But to your point that you just mentioned, how can you declare the end of the golden age? And I mean, to be fair, I don't know that coin was termed until after people saw the rest of the season, or at which point people decided there was a golden age. Is there a silver age? Is there a bronze age? I mean, honestly, what does that imply and what does that mean? I really don't know. I mean, I know that's a terminology people talk about with, comic books and even arcades, video games, things of that nature, but, to talk about that with The Simpsons, seems weird to me, especially when, the last episode, to be fair, has a 9.1 out of 10 rating, but it is legit the highest rated episode of the season. That was the City of New York versus Homer Simpson, and I'm just looking on IMDb for a quick reference. This episode is rated a 7 out of 10, but then immediately the next week we get 8.1, 8.2, 8.2, 7.8, 7.8, 8.1, 7.6, 7.6, all the way until we get a 5.0, which is the lowest rated episode of the season, and that's a All Singing, All Dancing, which is a recap show.
Well, I feel like a lot of this terminology and ideology comes from a mass frenzied aspect where if a couple critics say something, and this is still the age where I believe we still had dial-up internet at this time, if I remember correctly. So if a few people say it and Harry Shearer says it and Matt Groening says it, then all of a sudden everyone just automatically assumes it's okay before they ever actually see it themselves. When they don't listen to Ken Keeler or Josh and Bill, and reading some of the things that they said, I was just yeah, okay, yeah, I don't attach yourself to the mass frenzied or the piranha aspect of everyone else just picking away at this episode. And if all the critics say this is the downfall of The Simpsons when the episode first airs, they haven't seen anything after. So that just goes back to my original point. I've remember how I felt the first time that I saw this episode for the most part. We'll get into that later, but coming back and watching it all these years later, it's still a Simpsons episode.
Well, and we even talked about this episode a little bit with Carolyn Omine when she joined us for the Sideshow Bob episode Cape Fear all the way back in season 4, if I'm remembering correctly.
That feels right.
Yeah, and even at that time, we had briefly discussed a popular YouTube video which is basically titled "The Day the Simpsons Died," which I don't even know if I should have said that because now I just promoted that dude's work. But honestly, I'll give him credit for the fact that like he presents himself well, but like at the same time, he comes off as super pompous in my opinion, and just like
and he goes to extremes.
Fuck yeah.
If I remember correctly, he extrapolated things far beyond the point he should have, and you're like assuming a lot when you take it to the extreme.
But it was heavily about this episode and this being again the quote unquote death of the golden age, and how apparently, and I don't know how true this is, and it's hard because we can't go back in time and really see what the fans of the Simpsons and you and I have our own feelings. I don't remember having any feelings at all towards this episode other than like, oh, that was a pretty good episode. Like I enjoyed it and it was funny. Like I didn't have any and it could be of my age. I mean, maybe neither of us were old enough to have this. Maybe if we were more like, you know, a little bit more jaded and in our 20s, we would have been a little bit more pissed off about how, oh, they ruined the voice of the Simpsons, Skinner. It's ruined now. I don't even want to watch it anymore. Like, but that's not at all how I remember feeling. I don't remember anybody else feeling that way, but there are claims that a large part of the population of Simpsons fans did feel hurt that Principal Skinner in this episode. Oh, by the way, spoiler alert. You're watching a review show or listening because it's a podcast. But either way,
watch us.
Either way, if they felt like the carpet was pulled out from them, but I think we can go ahead and dive into this a little bit. Part of that could have been perpetuated by Harry Shearer as well, because I do know that there's an interview with him in 2001 that basically said like he was mad about it, and others felt the same way. The quote is, "That's so wrong. You're taking something that an audience has built 8 or 9 years of investment in and just toss it in the trash can for no good reason for a story we've done before with other characters. It's so arbitrary and gratuitous, and it's disrespectful to the audience."
Well, I can tell you when I first saw this episode, because we would have been in about the 7th grade when this episode aired. So I'm in the middle of Simpsons fandom. So this definitely left a little bit of an impact on me as a kid. Watching the episode, like during the episode, I did feel like, oh my gosh, like this character that I've known for all these years, that's not really who he is. And like, oh my gosh, this feels kind of wrong. But then at the end of the episode, despite the fact that they, again, spoiler alert, as Miles said, it's a review show, they literally kicked the real person out of town. You're just kind of like, well, that's what's supposed to happen. And you don't think about how bad that actually is until you rewatch it. But like by the end, they bring it back around. And I remember, because I had a group of friends that watched this where this was a bit of a big deal. But you know, for all those years of The Simpsons, you saw them on syndication over and over again, so like you got to revisit it a lot. But it definitely reminds me of in the Spider-Man comics back around the same time, where they had the Clone Saga, where you found out the real Spider-Man wasn't actually the real Spider-Man that you've been reading about for 40 years or whatever. But that was a much higher extreme with Spider-Man than this particular character on a Simpsons show. But it's for me, reading what Ken Keeler said and Josh and Bill, like it really puts a lot of things in perspective, because Josh and Bill are known for doing experimental episodes. I mean, even Homer's Enemy was supposed to be an experimental episode, and it worked. And what's the one from the previous season that I'm forgetting of?
22 short films? Yeah,
22 short films, which is now regarded as one of the greatest episodes of The Simpsons. So not all experiments can be considered successful, but I don't necessarily think that this one was a bad experiment.
Nah, I would agree with what you had to say there. And it's interesting, too, because the commentary did feature Josh Weinstein, Bill Oakley, and Ken Keeler, the writer, which was great to have that perspective, because that wasn't a more positive light. I think it would have been kind of boring just to hear people shitting on it. Like, right. You can read the interview, but you want to hear about more of like the creative process and whatnot. But it did legit at the table read really, cause a divide amongst the staff. And Shearer in that either that same interview or possible a later one, but he actually said that the writers now refuse to talk about it, claiming that they know it was a horrible mistake, so they never mention it because it's like they're punishing the audience for paying attention. I just wanted to say that last bit because I think it's interesting because he said the writers refused to talk about it, but definitely now that is no longer the case because if you get on Twitter, there's definitely several writers that have shared their opinion and talked about it openly and even revealed, like Josh Weinstein not that long ago revealed some cut pages from the script that didn't actually make it into the episode, which he does frequently. So yeah, all that for now. I have another Ken Keeler quote, but I actually want to save that for the end so we can put a bow on this whole thing when we come back around to it.
I just want to add one thought with Harry here. I understand why he says the things he does about this episode because he's the one that has developed the character and he's like close to the character and he's attached to the character. So like even though I don't agree with him, and again, this is all, because we can look back on it. We have, what's the word I'm looking for? Not Captain Obvious, the South Park character.
Oh, 2020. The power, foresight, hindsight. There it is.
Hindsight. Thank you. We have hindsight on this, so we can say not a big deal. But like, it actually makes me like Harry a little bit more because he's so like strong and trying to defend his creation here a little bit.
Totally fair. Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong side here. I didn't mean to imply that. I just meant that from like a commentary perspective. If that sounded negative, I just meant from the commentary perspective. I think the positive side is often more interesting. Not that I don't think Harry had a point. I just don't think at the age it affected me. But yeah, especially maybe more than anybody, he would have been affected by it. I mean, like he's invested himself into this. So like, yeah, it's totally a fair way for him to feel. So let's go ahead and back it up just a little bit. We are talking today about, again, The Principal to Pauper, which debuted on September 28th, 1997. And as we often talk about when we're in the beginning and ends of our seasons, or more of the beginnings, I should say, this is actually a holdover episode from season 8, which started out as well as last week's episode. I don't know how many more of those there are. I think next week might be the like official first, produced in season 9 episode, but we'll definitely talk about that when we get there. I already mentioned the commentary on this one was Josh Weinstein, Bill Oakley, and Ken Keeler. And this one did not have a chalkboard gag, but it did have a couch gag where the Simpsons run in dressed as astronauts before they all like individually, or no, is it the couch that blast off? No, I can't remember. No, they all individually blast off.
You're hurting my brain right now. This is going to be a Mandela effect.
It is. It's whichever. Depending on which copy from which parallel universe you have, it's either individual or couch taking off. Can't wait to hear from you all on Twitter. Oh man, so we open up this episode with Principal Skinner inspecting his school, and I mean, like, in the most anal way possible, like measuring that the trash cans are exactly 12 inches from the wall, and like just as anal as you can possibly get, even to the point where all the clocks are synchronized, which is complete bullshit, because those clocks are never synchronized with anything. Like, let's be real. It's like the old school clock that you'd have in your school that, like, somehow would tick slower the closer it got towards the end of the period.
Which was a real thing. But yes, it's a very Seymour thing to do, and if he was like some punk, roguish, never-do-well rebel type guy, this would be not up his alley at all.
Right. It's truly juxtaposing who he was to, or as we'll find out here in a little while. Yeah. But it's really funny to me too. Two things. One, and this is kind of important just for the sentimental, sweet side of this plot that we'll get to. Skinner actually has a pocket watch that he uses to synchronize the clocks. It has a picture of his mother, Agnes Skinner, on the other side of the locket. And in this case, Superintendent Chalmers, or Super Nintendo Chalmers, is actually following Skinner around kind of secretly. And I absolutely love his line, "Good Lord, the rod up that man's butt must have a rod up its butt."
Oh, Superintendent Chalmers, can I offer you a cup of coffee flavored Beverine? I don't even know what that is.
I think it's just to point out that it's not legally allowed to be called beverage.
Yeah, maybe.
But Chalmers says, "I take it gray with creamium."
Oh.
But then Skinner actually shows up, and he has a secret. Or I'm sorry, before Skinner shows up, he wants to have a secret announcement because it's actually Seymour's 20th year as principal, and they decide that they're going to hold a surprise tribute Friday night.
It's my 20th year, too.
The teacher's lounge is for teachers, Willie. Oh, poor Willie. It's kind of funny, though. So in Miss Hoover's class, she's looking for a volunteer to do an oral report on Principal Skinner's life for the tribute, and only one volunteer, or I'm sorry, first Ralph has a question.
Miss Hoover, which one is oral?
Out of your mouth, Ralph. Volunteers? Thank you, Lisa.
No, Miss Hoover, I'm Ralph.
I only need one volunteer, Ralph.
Miss Hoover, which one is one?
So Lisa is the only person that raised her hand other than Ralph. Ralph was raising his hand the entire time. And Lisa's nice enough to say that Ralph and I could actually do the report together. But Hoover's like, your funeral, I guess.
Miss Hoover?
Just goes on and on and on.
Just give the kid some pace and let him be.
20 years as principal is a big deal, and even Bart himself is respectful enough to contribute to Skinner's celebration. He's humming a song as he sticks little miniature flags into little brown, it kind of looks like meatballs, we'll give him credit for now.
Yeah.
They're on a baking sheet, but then Marge comes in and asks, why are you doing that?
Our class is making refreshments for Skinner's party. These are in honor of his army days.
That explains the flags, but what about the dog food?
My theory is Skinner likes dog food.
So Marge suggests they bake him a cake instead. But then Homer comes in, ooh, a fresh batch of America balls.
Seem to be going over well.
We cut over to... it's Homer sitting at his writing desk. No, this is just a misprint in the script. Totally
yes.
It is. Yeah. Cool. That makes me feel better about not being crazy because we cut back over to Principal Skinner's home where he's sitting at his desk and he's getting the projector ready to do what seems like a silhouette of his head. But his mother calls out, Seymour, tell me what time it is. Now!
7 o'clock Friday night, Mother. Time for our weekly silhouette.
No! Cutting out your ugly nose gives me a hand cramp.
Oh, but you love silhouette nights. And then we go through your bird book and make up silly captions.
And then we see Agnes comes downstairs all dressed up as if, ready to go to a nice event.
Mother, why are you all dressed up?
I'm sick of this house and I'm sick of you. Tonight we're going for a drive.
What's so special about tonight?
Nothing! Now put on your special suit and get in the car.
Yes, Mother.
Oh, super subtle. But also, it really paints a good picture of the Skinner relationship, as awkward as that may be. We see Skinner drive to the elementary school with Agnes in tow, and they even pass a sign that says, "Tonight, surprise tribute to Seymour Skinner."
Yeah, well, I think Agnes is actually driving, if I remember, because she pulls past the sign, so he can't see it.
Correct.
Why are we stopping at my school, Mother? What does it say on that sign?
Smack! I don't like your tone. But lo and behold, as soon as they enter the auditorium, it becomes very abundant that there is a surprise waiting for Skinner, and Agnes even wishes her son a happy anniversary. I love that. His mom, he's like, "Oh, you still are the master of deception, Mother."
I surely am.
Oh man, Lisa and Ralph give a wonderful presentation on the life of Seymour Skinner on stage. They have pictures of him. They have him looking noble while there's an American flag flying in the background. And Lisa is admittedly carrying most of the weight here. So, in 1966, a brave young man named Seymour Skinner enlisted and shipped out to Vietnam, where he rose to become platoon sergeant. Ralph?
Principal Skinner is an old man who lives at the school. Lisa?
Sergeant Skinner was a hero. He risked capture many times behind enemy lines.
Teacher made me go to Principal Skinner's office when I was dirty.
And he survived to make it back to Springfield, where he became the fine educator we salute tonight.
When I grow up, I want to be a principal or a caterpillar. I love you, Principal Skinner.
And to be fair, Ralph crushes with that last line because the crowd applauses like crazy. Well, okay, they applaud Lisa probably mostly.
No, he really did bring it home there, I think. Good for you, Ralph.
They get a group of children that sing to piano music.
They call him Skinner, Skinner, faster than lightning. No one you see is stricter than he.
But at this moment, we see a taxi drive by the school and reads the sign, Tribute to Seymour Skinner. And he immediately is like, pull over, driver. And as he walks in the room, it's actually Chalmers on stage that is telling the crowd that even though they normally only serve cake on Thursdays, and I'm well aware today is Friday, nevertheless, I have a surprise for you. And Bart rolls out a cake onto the stage where a big applause comes up, and Skinner actually comes up and shakes Bart's hand and is kind of delighted that he got gagged with like a little hand buzzer.
Oh, an enjoyment buzzer. Oh, thank you. What a wonderful night to share with the people in the town that I love. I have never been happier or prouder to be Seymour Skinner.
But just then, a man from the taxi that we don't know, belts out, "You're not Seymour Skinner!"
Skinner! Skinner?
I'm Skinner!
Seymour! Oh!
Mother? She's my mother!
Will someone remove that crazy man, please?
No, he's not crazy. It's true. I'm an imposter. That man is the real Seymour Skinner. And I think now is a good time to point out that Martin Sheen actually guest starred in this episode and played the real Seymour Skinner, as we're about to talk about. But for now,
he's not the real Seymour Skinner, Miles.
It would seem that there's one of the two for sure but there's definitely two Skinners and a whole town's full of bewildered people that have no idea what's going on. But everybody just keeps looking shocked as they move slowly closer to the cake. And that actually brings us to the end of our first act. Yeah, Homer is sliding in, yeah. We open up Act 2, and we're actually in Principal Skinner's office, and Agnes has fainted, so she sits in the chair, and Chalmers is trying to get to the bottom of this, so he asks the man who he is.
Sergeant Seymour Skinner, U.S. Army.
And then the Skinner that we know says, "It's true. I was in his platoon. They said you were killed on the scouting mission."
No, just captured. It's kind of a funny story, really. After 5 years in a secret POW camp, I was sold to China for slave labor. And since 1977, I've been making sneakers at gunpoint in a sweatshop in Wuhan.
That's not funny.
Well, I guess you had to be there. Gosh.
But we find out that the UN had that factory shut down last week and the embassy had sent him home. So clearly this man is going to be in his right mind, stable, healthy, and ready to work with children.
Good.
So we actually have to hear the story from who we know to be Skinner, but we actually learn is named Armin Tanzarian. Everybody is so surprised, but Bart just laughs.
Yeah.
I'm an orphan from Capital City, and those who recall my fight to outlaw teenage rudeness may be shocked to learn that I myself was once a street punk. In the past, Armin Tanzarian drives his motorcycle... Oh, that's his fucking narration. But we actually see a narration
Stage directions.
Basically Skinner being a punk on the streets of Capital City.
Oh, man. Hey, Miles, can you scroll up to page 2, please? I'm just trying to make you scroll.
But yeah, so Skinner explains that the path he was on, it was only a matter of time before he found himself in front of the judge.
Who happens to literally be in front of him.
He actually ends up walking into him, on the street. Yeah, not in court. But he does end up in court, and they gave him a choice: jail, the army, or apologizing to the judge and the old lady that he ran into.
Of course, if I had known there was a war going on, I probably would have apologized.
So we cut to the jungles of Vietnam, where Armin's platoon is fighting in a bunker. Armin is actually just grooming himself, combing his hair, until it's literally shot out of his hands, but he's not really helping the rest of his squad. He does get a little angry when he loses his comb, though. He stands up like an idiot, though, and is like, "Who wants a piece of me?" And that's when actually the real Seymour Skinner tackles him to the ground, preventing him from being shot.
You trying to get yourself killed, Tanzarian? You got your whole life ahead of you. Don't you have any dreams?
My dreams all involve combing my hair.
Ah, gosh, son. Everybody's got dreams. I come from a town called Springfield, and my dream is to go back and become principal of the elementary school.
Some people might call that a pretty corny dream, Sergeant.
Well, there's nothing corny about fresh-faced youngsters skipping to school, scraping knees and spelling bees, and pies cooling softly on the windows. Well, sir, if that's corny, then corn me up.
So we actually get some more narration from Armin, who's saying that Sergeant Skinner took me under his wing and showed me that life is worth living. I came to think of him as the big brother I never had. He made me believe I might have a future after all. And when they told us he was missing and presumed dead, my future died once again. My life lost all meaning.
I think it's important to say that during that part 2, you see the pocket watch that the real Skinner has with Agnes's picture on the inside.
Very much so, I agree. And also, let's just take a pause here to point out how, when you really start to break this down, this is a very tragic story for Armin Tanzarian. Because, again, he's been a POW for as long as principal, so for 20 years, he's been a POW. I mean, that's fucking crazy.
You mean the real Skinner?
Yeah, the real Skinner. I'm saying his story is insanely tragic here because 20 years later, he actually comes back and has the opportunity to live his dream, but everybody fucking hates him.
Or Skinner, fake Skinner has set him up for success. All he has to do is step right back into his shoes.
I guess, yeah. I don't know, man. But either way, Bart is getting antsy. Come on, get to the part where you steal his identity.
I'm trying to explain how emotionally fragile I was.
Oh, it's one of those stories. So we learned that essentially Armin had taken it upon himself to return to... this is confusing as hell sometimes. Armin has decided to return to the Skinner's home where Agnes lives to essentially
give his
belongings to his mother and tell her of the bad news because, she hasn't been told yet. But oddly enough, when Armin clears his throat to start to speak, Agnes interrupts. Seymour, is that you?
I don't know why I did what I did. I guess I couldn't bear to tell her about her son. What I did was wrong, but I'd do it again.
Yes, Mother. It's me.
You look different somehow, but you must be Seymour. Yes, you are Seymour. As strange as it sounds, deep down I think she knew I wasn't her son. But a lie made us both happier than the truth ever could have.
You can have some lima beans as soon as you've cleaned your room. Go upstairs. Third door on the left. Oh, I'm sorry. She actually whispers, go upstairs, then yells out, third door on the left. Don't walk on the rugs.
No, she says, go! And then she goes, upstairs, third door on the left.
That's what it is, yeah. So basically, they're both in on the idea that he's not really... It's like he said, the truth sucks, and the lie makes them both feel better. But that's the first time Armin says, Yes, mother.
Kind of hesitantly, but falling into his role.
Right, like immediately going into that submissive role.
Don't judge her too harshly, Sergeant. She was a lonely old woman. If you must blame someone, blame me.
That's pretty much what I was planning to do there, Armin.
Well, that's about it. So for the past 26 years, I've dedicated myself to living out your dream.
I didn't dream anything about an aqua suit or a lavender shirt, but you did take care of my mom.
A dagger through my heart.
So this is the first interaction between the real Skinner and Agnes. He tries to help his mother, but like it's very awkward between them, and she even says, "I'm not your son." There's a whole falling out here, basically, between...
She's not his son.
He's not her son. You know what I meant. Fuck you. There's a whole falling out with this very awkward situation, and I do like, now Armin, as we know him to be, is like, well, I suppose I'll have to find a hotel. Chalmers is there for him, though.
I won't hear of it. Tonight, you can sleep on the floor of your office.
Immediately, Bart starts taking advantage of his principal's, like, fragile mental state. He comes in and says, "Hey, Armin, Miss Krabappel sent me. I forgot my dad's signature on my report card." And it's funny because he's, like, sleeping in, like, his underwear, and he, like, very quickly, like, tries to, like, scrounge behind his desk.
He said he forged his dad's
You're right,
signature.
yeah, it's basically, the whole point here is Bart is going to rub it in Skinner's face that he can't really punish him for forgery.
Oh, now, Bart, you know that's wrong.
But he does admit that punishing him would be hypocritical. So why don't you just write a 30-word essay on what you've done?
Hey, easy there, you big imposter.
So back, we see that life is getting kind of weird for Armin now, because at the quickie mark, he doesn't really know what to call himself, and he's like asking Ep2, so how should I sign my name?
Just put an X, then you can call yourself whatever the hell you want.
Armin is like, there's no need for profanity. My name may have changed, but I'm still the same man I was last week.
Not to us, you're not. I mean, how would you feel if you suddenly found out Ned Flanders was an imposter?
Who's Ned Flanders?
My next-door neighbor. Religious guy?
Oh, you mean Reverend Lovejoy?
No, I don't. What I mean is, to me, you're just a stranger, pretending to be something he's not. Sorry, but that's just how I feel.
And that's when Armin realizes that there's really no need. They're right. The townspeople would feel that way, and that's not really, nobody's fault but his own. So he actually decides that he is going to get out of town. Well,
it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny too that Marge is pointing out another character voiced by Harry, and he had no idea who.
Oh
he was.
God, yeah, you're so fucking right. Yeah, sorry, I even missed that. But yeah, you mean Reverend Lovejoy? It also makes sense. So,
he had no idea.
Why would they know each
Flanders
other?
is.
I mean, Rod and Todd are Catholic school or whatever.
I thought they went to Springfield. I don't remember
I
at all.
Remember
yeah,
them
it's
seeing them
funny.
at public school, and it seems like that Ned would think public school is kind of the devil.
All right. We're learning a lot today, Miles.
So we do get a sequence where Skinner, Armin, fuck. They don't fuck. That's not what happens. But
and a Skinner baby is born.
Skinner is getting ready to leave town, and he's kind of wrapping up, getting his belongings. He's saying goodbye. And there's like this moment where he actually gives the pocket watch back to Armin, and this is kind of like the first line where you kind of realize there's going to be some major like issues in this new family relationship, because Armin says, hands the pocket watch with his mother's face in it and says, "Make sure you take care of her." And the real Skinner just responds, "I'll wind her every day." So he didn't realize that he was talking about his mother.
Yeah, that was it doesn't make you feel good in that moment.
No.
What I do kind of enjoy on rewatching this episode and this scene is I feel like the episode is kind of going in a full circle moment here, because even though it's only halfway through the episode, because the beginning of the episode took place in this auditorium, and it was a cause for celebration, and like everything Skinner could possibly want was happening in that. And then literally you're back in the auditorium, and it's the exact opposite direction. Everything he loves and holds dear has been taken from him in this moment, including the watch, which is symbolizing Agnes in the scene. So
yeah, that's
was that too much?
That's great. I like that. There's even, it's kind of awkward. It doesn't make you feel good, like you said. It's like there's like this negative way about it when you watch it, where Agnes is talking to Armin, and she tells him, "I poached some fish for your trip, Mr. Tanzarian. They're full of tiny bones, so I want you to be careful." It's like such an arbitrary line, like, but like it represents them so well.
But it's like literally the fish hasn't been cooked like at all, which makes it so. But they have to add that little bit of comedy,
of course,
in there.
Yeah. He also goes to say goodbye to Edna, even though they had plans to see a film tonight. But instead, "I'm leaving town forever."
No, please, I don't care what you've done. You're still a decent, honorable man.
That's the kind of talk that makes me want to marry you.
Oh.
But instead, I'm leaving town forever. Goodbye.
And that will definitely become an issue for them in the future.
Yep, it sure will. He walks away, goes to a store your stuff unit. So I guess he's had that for a while now. He actually opens up the garage, and you see his old motorcycle and leather jacket. So he puts it on and he rides off into the streets. And that actually, as he drives by, he sees Bart, who's like, "Principal Skinner?
Up yours, children."
And then we see him driving off towards Capital City, and that actually brings us to the end of the second act. So a major change in all of Springfield at that point. And just to back it up slightly, that moment with Edna and Skinner was actually really sad too. Like there's a lot of really, like, Edna is visibly upset by this.
I mean, they had exactly what they wanted, and it's kind of interesting in a way too, because on a show that resets itself quite frequently, Skinner and Edna staying together at the end of that episode was one of the only instances we can think of where like they carried stuff over outside of Lisa being a vegetarian. So it's kind of interesting that you have a Principal Skinner storyline that carried over still, and like we're going to definitely talk about this episode doing the same thing. I
agree, yeah, and there's a lot still to come. Obviously, we're going to do some major resetting of Springfield, if you weren't aware how the show works by now. But this is kind of where you can really start to debate, if you want to, on how much damage really was done here, because this is some emotional uprooting that's happening, and they're going to resolve it in, a third of or like 1/3 of an episode here now, and it goes fast.
Impossible.
It goes real fast. Hold on to your seats on this one for sure.
Hold on to the seat on the train tracks on this one.
Sure, if that's what you need to do. But
I hope you're tied down.
For now, we are coming back into Act 3 with Kent Brockman reporting the evening news.
Now to recap our top story in its entirety. The adaptable citizens of Springfield have opened their hearts to Principal Seymour Skinner, who...
Not that one. We get the wrong picture up.
That's right.
So we see that...
Idiots!
We see that the real Skinner is actually very grateful. Thank you. I must say, in many ways, Springfield really beats the old slave labor camps. And that gets the crowd cheering, even. That's the funny part to me.
I mean, that's his whole life. That's what he's known, basically.
Lisa has some insight here that she admits Sergeant Skinner seems okay, but Mr. Tanzarian pulled himself up from the streets and earned our respect and admiration.
What about his name?
His name doesn't matter. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet.
Not if you called them stench blossoms.
Or crapweeds.
I'd sure hate to get a dozen crapweeds for Valentine's Day. I'd rather have candy.
Not if they were called scrum drops. Just a little bit of fun, because like you said, this episode actually needs some of these doses of humor, because there's parts of it that aren't that funny. I mean, just being real, it's more emotionally hitting at times than it is like straight up just, chuckle humor.
Well, and it's funny that for a writer that was known for breaking up dramatic things with little bits of comedy, in William Shakespeare, they use a Shakespearean quote to bring in the laughter.
Boom. Love it.
Goes the dynamite.
So we actually get a speech from Skinner, and as Chalmers introduces him, he wants to remind them to respect, or remind the kids to respect him because he's a war hero.
Your new principal would like to say a few words. Remember, you have to respect him. He's a war hero.
Ha ha!
Thank you, Chalmers. You know, where I come from, there's no better way to get acquainted than by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance together. Why don't you lead us, son?
And he points to Bart Simpson. He clearly does not know the student base yet, because Bart proudly stands and says, "Hey, America, you're so fine, you blow my mind, America. America." Well, go ahead.
Well, that's very concise. But it's an insult to everything I suffered for. Now take a seat, Junior, and listen to someone who gave their youth service to their country. Mrs. Crabapple, the pledge, please.
You haven't dealt with women for a long time, have you, Sergeant?
Are you asking me out?
That's basically every drunk guy at every bar, for what it's worth. They just nailed that.
Well, he's really trying to fill out that Seymour Skinner role, I guess.
And we actually see Skinner back in his old neighborhood of 433rd Street. He actually pushes his bike down the strip there, and he sees a help wanted sign in a strip club where it says topless models, though his job turns out being wearing a sandwich board that just simply reads nudes, 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 but he's reading his advertisement lines. Like, he's supposed to basically be the hype man for the strip club, but he's reading it in doll principal voice.
Oh yes, oh yes. Capital City's nakedest ladies. They're not even wearing a smile. Nod suggestively. Yes, 6, count 'em, 6 gorgeous ladies just dying for your leers and catcalls. Yowza, yowza.
But back at the Skinner residence in Springfield, we can really start to see the tensions flaring between Agnes and Skinner, because it's 7:30 and Agnes is screaming, "Seymour, where are you? Where were you?"
A bar, Mom.
"I don't know what that is, but on Fridays you come straight home after school. Tonight is still a wet night. Sit there."
I really just came home to change into a turtleneck.
"Seymour, sit."
In the morning. Oh, Mom, I'm borrowing your car.
So he's really disrupting the situation at the Agnes home, and Agnes is not happy about it at all. And in fact, the next day she runs into Marge at the supermarket, and Marge asks her, how's the new son working out?
Well, I also want to point out, before we get into this scene, I think it's also clever of the script writing here that the real Skinner only calls her Mom.
Not Mother.
While Armin calls her Mother, which is much more formal and to Agnes's liking. So very, very minor detail, but it's such a good juxtaposition right there,
I
too.
like that. And also, just on that same point, more bluntly, Armin Tanzarian would never just say, "I'm borrowing your car." If anything, he'd be like, "You want to go on this date with me?" But that's not how it's going, and Agnes is super upset about the most disobedient, smart-alecky, middle-aged man in creation, which is the part of the conversation that Edna walks up to and is like, "Hello, ladies. Is this a line for people who want to badmouth Sergeant Skinner?"
And have 10 items or less.
And we see Edna throw several things out of her card. 12, 11, 10. That man's a weenie!
Now, be fair, Edna. I liked Armin Tanzarian, too, but he was at least as big a weenie as Sergeant Skinner.
Yeah, but he was our weenie.
Now, there was a weenie you could be proud to call your son.
And Marge points out, like, ladies, did you ever tell him that? And they both think for a minute, and it's very clear that they really didn't.
I think Edna did. I think this is more geared towards
Agreed.
Agnes. So, what do we do?
So, we actually see the plan to get to Capital City. Marge suggests they go after him. So, it's Marge with Agnes and Krabappel. They need a ride from Homer, who is still not entirely clear on the plan. Okay, once more. Where are we going?
To Capital City.
And why are you and the old lady in the car?
We're going to talk Armin Tanzarian into coming back.
And why is Marge here?
I came up with the idea.
And why am I here?
Because the streets of Capital City are no place for 3 unescorted ladies.
Okay, why are the kids here?
Because we couldn't find Grandpa to sit for
Why
them.
is Grandpa here?
Because Jasper didn't want to come by himself.
Huh, fair enough.
Hello, beautiful.
In your dreams.
We'll see about that.
And I love this because he actually snores for a few beats here before you can hear him in his dreams say,
hello, beautiful.
And I also love that, like, there is never any resolution at all to, like, why everyone's there other than they just are. But Homer's cool with it. Again, this is one of the comedy fillers. I don't mean that in a bad way, but they're just trying to keep the levity
I like
going,
this moment.
In between the more serious beats of this story.
Yeah.
But it does not seem like things are going well back in Capital City. I mean, Skinner's like sleeping on a mattress on the floor. He's drinking.
He's on 433rd Street. What do you expect?
But he does make a declaration almost out of nowhere. My mind is made up. I'm not coming back, and that's final.
Oh, Seymour.
And I'm not Seymour. My name is Armin. This is Armin's apartment. Armin's liquor. Armin's copy of Swank. Armin's frozen peas.
Can I see your copy of Swank, Armin?
Homer reaches over. Yes, you can. This is Armin's life, and maybe it's not perfect, but at least I'm back where I belong. I was born a no-goodnik, and I'll die a no-goodnik.
Seymour! I didn't bring you up to use language like that.
Well, you didn't bring me up at all.
To hell I didn't. I've been taking care of you for 26 years. I'm the only mother you've ever known.
But you have your real son.
You are my real son. You've been my son longer than he has, and he doesn't need me, and I don't need him. Now you march yourself downstairs and get in that car.
Yes, Mother.
And the rest of you too.
Yes, Mrs. Skinner.
Yes, Mrs. Skinner.
She has a way about commanding respect, I suppose. But
where's he going to fit in that car?
He's riding on Jasper's lap. But that's kind of where I was talking about where, I mean, this scene is funny, especially the good, no-goodnik, don't use that language. I mean, there's some good jokes in here, but that's a very quick resolution, how it just quickly, this whole conversation, like, turns around. And, of course...
And conveniently, the whole town is outside when they're driving back into town.
That is another thing I was going to point out. Not only are they, like, together, but they're at the school, man. Like, why? Like, it would make more sense if they showed up at the mall and everybody happened to be shopping. I mean, this was 1997.
Well, they drive through some places and start honking.
And people follow.
But still.
Yeah, you're right. Like, honestly, like, if you were, like, right now, if somebody you knew even, like, came honking, like, you wouldn't walk, you would, well... No cell phones. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I was going to say that we'll just have like a Facebook invite or something to go to this place to see Tanzarian.
Yeah, okay, fair. Technology changes. That's a completely fair thing. So...
But in 1997, no.
But they do get back, and Armin Tanzarian steps out, announces, you know, that you can see that everybody's happy to have him back. But then Skinner shows up.
You all seem to be forgetting that I am Seymour Skinner. This is where I belong. You can't ask me to disappear just because you like some other guy better. I gave half my life to you people. Aren't I entitled to a little dignity?
You're right, Sergeant.
Well, I don't see any way out of this.
But Homer has a solution. Now, if you'll allow me, I think I'll have a solution that'll satisfy the town and let Sergeant Skinner keep his dignity. And we see that a moment later, Sergeant Skinner is sitting in a chair that's tied to a flat rail car, and the train whistles and prepares to pull away.
But I'm a hero!
And we salute you for it. Now, don't come back.
And the whole town salutes him. Maybe Homer got inspired by Rex Banner leaving town and thought of something somewhat similar.
Maybe, yeah.
Except they didn't have any more catapults.
But Agnes even has a goodbye. I'm sorry, Seymour. It's nice that you're alive, but you're just not what I'm looking for in a son. I'm glad you understand.
Yay!
And then we're back to our original Seymour Skinner, who says to the town, this is a lovely gesture, but we still have to face the fact that I'm not really Seymour Skinner.
Oh, no, we don't, Judge Snyder.
By the authority of the city of Springfield, I hereby confer upon you the name of Seymour Skinner, as well as his past, present, and future mother. As past, present, future, and mother.
Okay.
And I further decree that everything will be just like it was before all this happened, and no one will ever mention it again, under penalty of torture.
Yay! Why isn't Lisa tortured in the future?
There's a couple of things we're going to talk about on that, but so Agnes hands over the pocket watch from earlier and says, "Here, son, this is yours again."
I have never been happier or prouder to be Seymour Skinner, but these last few days as that hot-headed rogue Armin Tanzarian has taught me a thing or two. Now, maybe I've been a little too uptight in the past. Well, from now on, you're going to see a new Seymour Skinner.
Oh, no, we won't!
Yes, Mother.
And that actually brings us to the end of our third act and to the end of the episode, The Principal and the Pauper. I definitely have a few things to say, but first, Richie, is there anything that you or that book of yours want to say before we get out of here?
I know there's, like you said, a bit to discuss here. I just wanted to point out how, Skinner, Armin's whole brush up with the judge at the beginning caused him to go meet the Skinner that we all don't like, and then at the end the judge is the one that fixed everything. So I like that everything in the story kind of had a cyclical feel to it, and I actually think this script was quite well written for the most part. And I know Ken Keeler has some stuff he wanted to say about that, and I'm sure you're going to talk about that, so I'll turn that over to you. But like really getting into the script, it feels like there's a lot more symbology or metaphors in it than there have been in recent episodes.
There's a lot, for sure. There's a lot. So, let me back up and say a few things here. So, one thing I actually missed at the very top of the show that we should have pointed out is The Principal and the Pauper is a parody of the Mark Twain story, The Prince and the Pauper.
Yes.
But that was not actually the original title of this episode. Originally, this episode was going to be titled Skinnersby, which is a parody of the movie Summersby that came out in 1993 and has a similar plot about a man that returns home from war after his wife and friends thought he had perished. But they changed it to The Principal and the Pauper instead. And I think that's a good fit. Both of them would have been fine.
Yeah.
But I think that The Prince and the Pauper is a much more well-known piece of pop culture or just, history in general than Summersby ever will be. Not that that's not a fine film, I'm sure. However, moving a little bit beyond that, we've talked a lot about the controversies of this episode in terms of the backlash it called, both from fans and the writers themselves. I do know, though, for sure that they didn't completely stop talking about this episode, because this episode was actually referenced twice more in episodes. Let me find it real quick. it's referenced twice. It was only referenced twice more ever on the show, at least according to IMDb. It was on The Simpsons Behind the Laughter in 2000, where the episode was used as an example of increasingly gimmicky and nonsensical plots. It was also used in Annoyed Grunt Bots, which is season 15, episode 9, and it's to shut Skinner down when Lisa, as you referenced earlier, calls him Tanzarian.
She should be tortured.
When he begins to complain about naming a new cat Snowball 2. So, we'll get to that, but you kind of started to allude to it. Ken Keeler was the writer of this episode once again, and this was actually the last episode of The Simpsons written by Ken Keeler, but despite all of the backlash of this episode, he commented that he feels that it is the best TV episode that he has ever written. And I can't compare it apples to apples because I don't know his work specifically that well, but this is a damn fine episode in my opinion, especially if you just look at it in a vacuum and not related to, the first 9 seasons of the show. First 8 seasons of the show, whatever.
Yeah, and we talked about it at the top of the episode as well. I remember by the end of the episode still feeling the first time I watched it a little bit like, oh, now I know he's not the real Skinner, and I'll always remember that, and I have. But, that was 20-odd seasons ago, so it's like it's more of a punchline to a joke now where you're still like, this is Skinner, he's always going to be Skinner, and it's... Bill and Josh said it, that it's an experiment. I think they even said at one point it's non-canonical, so that because it's an experiment, so like you can just kind of forget about it if you want to. But I definitely think this is a much better episode than people give it credit for. You gotta drown out all that noise of people talking about stuff and just watch it, relive it, enjoy it for yourself, because there's a lot of really heartwarming moments in this episode. There's a lot of touching moments, and they get in their quick little comedy jabs enough, which is what a Simpsons episode is supposed to do.
Yeah, man. I don't disagree with any of that, and
Man, we've been agreeing a lot in this episode.
I was going to say, I haven't actually heard that they said this wasn't canon, though. That's the only part that stood out to me on that. But honestly, I don't think it matters one way or the other, because like every episode of The Simpsons, they did a reset. They fixed it. I mean, it was a weird one. It took a fucking judge from out of nowhere, but hey, it works.
All the townspeople were outside, so that includes the judge.
Lots of witnesses on hand, and everybody was in agreement.
There you go.
Everybody in the town, for once, was
decided.
Completely in agreement, which may be the most unrealistic part of that episode. But either way, that's going to do it for this week's Best Darn Diddly. And as always, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. Thank you for downloading, supporting on Patreon, all of the wonderful things that you do to support us and keep us going forward. Now out of the golden age, apparently. It's going to be an interesting ride moving forward, as next week we're going to be discussing Lisa's sax.
We hope that we're weenies that you can be proud to call your podcasters.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.